Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, one of the most valuable hours of your day. Hello, I'm Michael, and today I'm your MC for this adventure. Today's show is The Fear of Death, Confronting It, Writing Your Own Eulogy. But before we get into the show, let me introduce you to my co host. Our first is Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here talking about death, my favorite subject.
We have Willow, our trauma consultant.
I'm
Hi
choking on the
everyone.
words.
Lovely to be here tonight.
Deirdre, our development strategist.
Hi, I'm glad to see everybody.
And Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be with you.
Nice.
Wonderful. If you are viewing us live on Facebook or YouTube or one of the other uh,
Periscope.
platforms, um, feel free to ask us a question or leave us a comment, and we'll be there to answer. So today we're talking about death and confronting death, and this is a really valuable thing. But this is actually part of a two-part show. We talked about this earlier 2 weeks ago, and now we're talking about the skills and solutions to this, in particular, writing a eulogy or planning a funeral. But the idea here is to confront the idea of a fear of death and try and really address that, because a lot of people, maybe most people, think that they don't necessarily fear death, but the reality is that all this stuff that's going on right now is a result of people's fear of death. And when you see the streets are empty, it means most people are afraid that they may die if someone sneezes on them. But is that really healthy? I don't think so.
That's what
And
we're
so,
told to do. Fear.
yeah, well, that's what they're fomenting that type of atmosphere, and we really need to think about what it is that they're steering us toward, and what they're doing with this power of fear that they've introduced us to. So, stay away. But actually, so this idea of writing a eulogy, writing your own eulogy, is an exercise that I was introduced to in a book called "The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People" by Stephen Covey. But there's actually been kind of a millennia or a couple of millennias of people advising that you confront your own death. In fact, Marcus Aurelius, one of the Roman emperors, and he's got he wrote a little journal himself that suggests that everybody should think about their death on a daily basis, so that they should really think about the fact that every single day is an opportunity to live, and that maybe we won't be here tomorrow, and so let's let's take this opportunity to do the things that are the most important, or at least take a little bit of that time to do the most important thing. And I think that's really behind what I'm suggesting here, is this idea of creating a urgency to doing the things that are most important to you. But in writing, in kind of looking into this area, I looked up a bunch of different suggestions, and there's one in particular that I think we can leave a link to, but it's from the website called The Art of Manliness, and of course, I would look for that because, being I'm a man, I would
So
probably do
manly.
that. Yeah. But in that, they describe writing your eulogy as one of the things you should do. And so it talks about, number one, just kind of creating an outline of your life. looking at when you were young, what were the things that you do, who were the people that you talked to, what were the schools that you went to, what were the teachers, you know, all the kind of people that you ran through in your childhood. What were the ideas that you had? What were the things that were important to you? What were the dreams that you had? And then as you progress into your later years into schools and college and careers and stuff like that, did you work at the same place? Did you work for the same people? What were the things that you did that were important? All those kind of things. But with all that said, and with that kind of idea as far as a beginning, some of the things that stand out to you in regard to this idea of outlining your life.
Well,
Anybody
I
got
thought it
any?
was sure. I thought it was like I was intrigued by it, and I thought it was really interesting. And actually, not too long ago, I started working on it, and it took me way much more time to actually, get going. And I feel I just scratched the surface so far. And I've been following what you just mentioned, the website you sent the link earlier. So and it felt really. It was great, because I kind of like set a mood. I put on some music and like I really came into the moment, and then I started going through the questions, and I felt like it really helped me. There was some kind of expansion happening. So it's like remembering my childhood, okay, my school, then my relationships, and the people that were and that are still. And so it was really a nice it was really nice because I felt that I was expanding beyond the things that would preoccupy me in this moment. And it made me go back in time and look at myself in the present from a different perspective. And that was good because it expanded my view. And actually, like, this happened and that happened and these people, and whoa, I wonder where he's right now and what's happening with this guy. And so that was really nice. And then I realized that we're not only supposed to look back at what actually happened and what we can remember, but also project in the future and imagine, we would live. I think it was asking us to imagine that we live until 90, and then so that would mean that, and I didn't reach there as yet, but so it would mean to kind of fantasize or to imagine, how the future years and decades of my life, would occur and what could happen. And that's even more exciting because it brings a lot of potential. And of course it's like just from the perspective that I have right now, and that's also changing and expanding on a day-by-day basis. But I can imagine that I'll have quite a lot of fun with this exercise still.
How about you, Willow? Any comments in regard to this idea exercise or your thoughts?
Um, Sorry, the look on my face of confusion just has to do with my screen is a little choppy. So I'm not kidding. I looked up and Agnieszka had disappeared from her seat. Just boom, not there anymore. And then I look back and all of a sudden she's boom back in her seat like magically. I was like, it's so cut out there. It had to have.
It's the cor-
I
it's
never
the it's
laughed.
the
It was just your imagination.
All in my
It's just
imagination.
your imagination.
I thought it was the
What has
COR dot police that came and took her away because she was.
What was the question again?
just your feelings on this idea of this exercise, going through kind of an outline of your life, looking at the different aspects of your life and those things. I think this is also a good thing about kind of connecting with all those people that were important to you, and maybe even some of the past accomplishments that you may have, kind of shuffle to the back of the closet in your mind. But holy cow, man, when I did this, I won this award, or I made this achievement, or, all these kind of things.
It
But
was actually it turned out to be a little more difficult for me than I thought it was going to be. I got about like halfway through and I stopped being able to write. Like I was still imagining it and going through it in my mind, but I was getting more frustrated because it was all coming at me so quickly that I couldn't describe everything. So I eventually just stopped writing. I had put on some music because that's usually what helps me write, is just putting on something that helps me express what I'm feeling at the moment, because a lot of times it's hard for me to label it and name it. But yeah, I got about halfway through, and then it just all stopped, and I was like, I don't really know what to write anymore, and I was just kind of frustrated. So I decided to leave it off to another day and then forgot about it. So, but when I was reading through your outline, I realized that my perception of what a eulogy should be, even though I've heard eulogies before, I know what they are. I focused more on the impression that I wanted other people to have of me. So, like, the part of the eulogy would be like, oh, yeah, she taught me this, or this is something that I always remember them doing. That was most of what I got written down in verbal, and then the rest of it was just like a flash of emotion coming at me at once. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's what I experienced.
It's all appreciated. Thank you. How about you, Agnieszka?
I had a lot of fun thinking about my funeral. Because my whole thing is like, I'm going to live till 150, and I don't really know if it's true, and I don't really care if it's true. But if I plan for 150, I'm never going to run out of things to do, right? That's kind of thinking behind it. So I'm imagining myself at 150 at my lakeside home with like a little pier going into the lake, right? And my three remaining friends gather around me as I'm dying, right? And then the whole thing about the death, I on my deathbed in my fantasy, I told them that they need to not tell anybody that I died. They need to burn my body, sprinkle the ashes in the lake, throw a single rose into the ashes, take a photo, and send it on Facebook, but tell everybody that it's not a real photo from my funeral, that it's a photo that's posing as a photo from my funeral. And then what I really did is got a rejuvenation treatment, met a young 20-year-old boy, and sailed off to Jamaica or something. And so that's what I think should happen after my death. That way I can live forever as a legend, like, Elvis or somebody like that, Amelia Earhart. Nobody will ever know if I died or really lived or which part of it is true. So that appealed to me.
And thus, the legend of Agnieszka will begin.
I did write a few sentences about the eulogy, though. She was a living dichotomy. She thought she was funny, but only rarely actually was. She lived for adventure, even though she loved staying at home. She created and recreated her life every decade, and reached for far more than she could ever grasp.
Lovely.
That's about where I'm at.
How about you, Deirdre?
I think I can talk now.
Oh, by the way, before you talk, hello, Kelly, and hello, Igor. Thanks for typing to us.
Hi, guys.
Hi, glad to see you guys again. So where was I at? So I did write notes 2 weeks ago about eulogies. I don't know, I didn't know much about them, and apparently it's like an in thing to do at the moment, to write your eulogy. And so I looked up on how to do that, and one of the notes that I took, that how I'm going to write it, is a story. So I'm going to be, instead of just going mapping out what I've done in chronological order for my life, I'm actually just going to write a very poetic story about just about me. No, I guess focusing a little bit on achievements and things I want to do, and that resonated with me more than just my achievements in a chronological order. Sounds a bit dry to me.
Awesome. That sounds wonderful. One of the things that occurred to me in regard to this is, how we are our best salesperson. We are the one that communicates who we are and what value we bring. to other people. And certainly understanding what is the things that motivate us the most. Those are the things that are going to, I hope, will come out in this kind of an exercise for, the those that go through this, is that you're going to find out the things that are really motivational to you, and certainly are meaningful, are the most meaningful to you. And those are things that you should be communicating to other people, because that's how they can, that's like their key to motivating you. So like if they want to do some, they if they know how, or what really makes you go, they can steer the project or situation into a way that helps you get what you want. And in doing that, we start to understand how to help each other, and create that kind of magic that happens when we have trusting relationships and good relationships. And again, this is kind of a way that we're learning the things that have been unlearned for the past 100 or 150 years, as we've been institutionalized and educated on, how to fear this and forget about all these things that actually matter the most to us. We've been taught to suppress all these things, feelings, and things about ourselves. And this is, and then that's all kind of hidden behind these fears that we have, whether they be the societal fears or fears of death or other things. But this is an exercise in which we can go through the process and then start to understand how we unlock, this little cage that they putting into our heads, that keeps us from being who we are and doing the things that we really want to do. Anybody got any comments on that?
That kombucha I tried to breathe at the beginning of the show is still stuck in my throat. So it's trying to kill me. Maybe my eulogy will come in handy sooner rather than later.
Are you afraid, Agnieszka?
No, but our listeners have made some comments.
Sure.
Kelly says that I stole her life story. I do not have a monopoly on the story. You can use it for yourself. You can just change a couple details. Like, the 20-year-old could be from Costa Rica and you might go to Mars instead of Jamaica or wherever, Egypt. Who knows? So yeah, story can be shared. And Igor says that we're looking like we're all hanging out in the same living room, just chit-chatting away.
Good.
So,
thanks,
That's what it's
Igor.
supposed to be like.
That's the whole point, right?
Well, it seems to me that the whole eulogy thing really is an exercise to really connect with yourself and to learn to relate to yourself, and even those parts that we normally would not really look at or would not even want to imagine, because we have negative associations with them. So it I would expect that by doing that and by being able to relate to those usually hidden parts or aspects of or neglected aspects of ourselves, we can, if we can manage to improve the love for ourselves, even from that perspective, and if we can embrace the fact that we are on a physical level mortal beings, and that there's a beginning and the end to the shelf life of this body that we are driving, of the suit that we are wearing or the car that we are driving, but that we're not that. We are the one who wears the suit. We are the driver of the car. So if you can improve our relationship with that reality that we are living in, then certainly that will help us also to improve relationships with those around us, and therefore increase the ability, the joy that we have in our life, and the joy that we can bring to others around us.
So in that act, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I came across I don't even know what to label it. It was an interesting emotional reaction where I started writing, and then I'd looked at your model of going as a timeline of through your life, and I got kind of angry because you can't. I was angry at the idea that anyone could think they could sum up the entirety of a human being and everything that they were in a couple of, in words. Like it just, part of me was like, okay, I understand. And the other part was like, this is also very fake because you can't sum up a person by words after. So it really put an emphasis on what are your connections? Like that's what it made me think, I don't know. I was wondering if anyone else had that kind of reaction.
Mm. Well, I just last year, had the experience of, my sister passing away. So that is the eulogy like I would think of first, that I was part of it in a way. And it was, so my mommy spoke, and she, would highlight, part of her life, and, the chronology thing, like to an extent. But I didn't share the sentiment that you were expressing a while ago, because I feel, if it's just dry words on a paper and somebody, whoever reads it, that doesn't have a connection, so maybe, yeah, but even then there's something more to that. But then it is not just the words, but it's how the words are uttered and who speaks those words as well, because it's, the words always are, and ideally if it's done in awareness and from a deeper level, then you express not just words, or you're not just talking about the dry facts, but you express in that case of eulogy, if you're speaking about somebody else, what he or she meant to you, and because you relive those moments that you're talking about while you're speaking and while you wrote them as well. So there's a whole, like energetic aspect to it. I think that's really, really powerful. And in that moment last year was interesting too, because I would speak a little bit as well, and then my brother too, and my father too. So it was, each one of us had a very unique and distinct way of, voicing what we felt and how we saw her as well. And so it is, yeah, I think it's, words are dry and they can be dry, but even the one who speaks them without emotion and without wanting to reveal anything, even in the driest of driest of things, being uttered, there still is something more than just the words. And I think the potential of speaking and of transferring and transmitting something through words is immense. And then if you do that intentionally, then I think, and then of course, if you open also to receive that and to feel it, with more than just the ears, then I think one can perceive also that there's some underlying transfer, beyond just the what we can hear with our ears, so to say.
I love how you put that. That gave me a whole, it's not even a new perspective, it's just a perspective that at the time I had forgotten about. That makes it more whole. It makes it, that's what's lacking. That's what was lacking. I couldn't imagine that without maybe too much emotion coming through.
Yeah.
Maybe I subconsciously was like, nope, absolutely not. We're not going there today.
Yeah, and that's a mechanism of self-protection, right? It's like, imagine they're standing in front of people, and you thinking and speaking, so there's a lot of things coming up, so that's natural as well, to wanting to hold back, because that's necessary as well, because you cannot allow at all times in any situation just for your emotions or your memory to take over. And sometimes it is important to control and to put things in a frame, or maybe then also to learn to, and I think that would fit like with what we talked about last week, to use the the emotional capacity, the intellectual capacity that we have in an appropriate way, so we can dose it, so we can connect to those around us, and so that we can also sense where they are, because maybe the way we would want to talk and express ourselves, that feels natural to us, it might be frightening to somebody else, or it might be totally inappropriate for the for the society standards or the situation or what they expect it to do. So we might have to be to compromise for the sake of the other people actually getting what we want to express.
Yeah, I would just jump in on that, and Deirdre, you can probably chime in here. You know, words can convey incredible amounts of emotion, and certainly if you look back at like birthday cards or gifts or little memories that maybe the kids put together a birthday card for you or something from 5 or 10 years ago, and you go and you open that birthday card up and you read what the kid said, and oh my God, all the emotions and all the memories and all the little things that those words can bring up. That is extremely powerful, and
Mm.
that's kind of one of the reasons why journaling is so important. But these are
Well,
things that,
talking
that
about
we can
cards,
go ahead.
that I was really upset one day and I was crying, and so my son um, made me a card. Now, there's nothing written on it. It's just he made it, and you open it up, and like a little heart pops out. It's a hold on, let me open it. It's a little love heart pops out.
Hmm.
I keep it right here on my desk, on my bookcase, and my kids send me all that type of stuff. They either write on it or so I've kept them all, and I keep them, and I'm going to organize them into folders so that I remember. They probably don't care. They're probably just like, "Why have you got that stuff, Mum?" Because I want to keep it. I don't know. Is it weird that I keep my kids' teeth and hair, like their first haircut and stuff?
My
They
mom
think it's
does.
so weird. They're
Yeah,
like,
no, it's
"Mom, why do you keep that stuff?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just want to keep it safe. I don't know why." It's like, "Mom, you're just weird." I'm like, "I'm not." They have like little trinket boxes in the jewelry store that you can like keep them in.
Yeah, it used to be a big deal, or maybe not a big deal, but it was a thing that my grandparents and the older generations used to do. I remember my grandfather pulling out his trunk. He loved trunks. And he'd pull out letters from like back when there was a horse and buggy to get to town, and it was a monthly trip. And he'd have lockets, and there'd be like baby hair, or in photo albums they'd have a lock of baby's hair, um and sometimes teeth, but that's harder to keep inside of like a you have to keep it in a little trinket box. But
Mm.
yeah, that used to not be considered strange.
Well, I think that's part of rituals, and that's another thing that our society has lost is some of the rituals that kind of take us from where we were as or as unknowing to a position of being an adult or knowing or
Mm.
graduating from you know a youth to adulthood. There's all kinds of different rituals that we can do, and then there's also things that we can give to each other that could anchor in something about what you're trying to deliver to other people or to other loved ones. There's a and I think of there's a particular movie that's got a like it's a watch, and it's like their great grandfather's watch, and he took it through the war and wore it through the war, and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of that watch is a symbol of the heritage of the family, and that's it's such an important piece, a trinket of the meaning of what their family is. These are the kind of things that we can give to each other and give to the people that are important to our lives, so that they can remember the things and carry on the things that we feel are important. How do you guys feel about that?
I like that because if I don't know my heritage, then I kind of don't know myself. And then I don't know. I notice that then if I don't know myself, then I'm vulnerable to being told what I should be doing with myself.
Or what you are, who you are.
Mm. So knowing your heritage is really important. I really do feel for people who they have this longingness. I can't make a broad statement about that, but I do know that there's this longingness to know who their family was.
Yeah.
I've
Why would
kind
that
of
be important?
experienced.
Why would? Well, I'll be really quick. Well, why should they care about that? Like, if it's not important, then that shouldn't matter. Why would somebody who's never known their family want that? Is it a combination of they see others' families and see that as important? But most of them have been raised by family, a good family, but they still have this longing to know who their family was. And I find that really interesting. There's something kind of deep in there to know that. I'm finished.
For me,
I was gonna say,
like, go ahead.
I was just real quick. I have
Did you
actually.
see her face? She's like, "Are you kidding, Dennis?"
No, my face just does some weird things sometimes. I have personal experience with this because my mom and my sister, well, my mom is fully adopted. She doesn't know her birth parents at all. Although there is a one-time memory where I swear we had a conversation. She knew who her last name was, and she knew a little bit about her family, but that was it. But I don't know if that was a real memory or not. I've never gotten a. Ever since then, she's always been like, "No, I don't know anything. I don't know what you're talking about." But my sister is also adopted. Of course, she's my mom's daughter, but our dads are different. She was adopted by my dad, and um, every time I've asked my mom, like, "Were you not curious? Did you not want to know?" She adamantly said that she didn't. Like she was happy where she was, and she just kind of had accepted it is what it is and moved on. And I never quite understood that. But my sister, after a while, she definitely did go ask about her father and um, not meet up, but she contacted a couple of her other sisters and kind of, because she was just wondering where she kind of came from. So I've seen that play out in people that I care about.
Go ahead, Dennis.
I also feel that is like perfectly normal, and that's something I experience, and I see people around me doing as well. Like collecting lock of a hair and those things, and it's I can imagine it's something that nowadays is not as fashionable, or it's probably getting lost because now everybody has probably hours and days of video material on some electronic device of their babies and their children, and which can just be wiped or lost like that. And then it seems much more meaningful to me to, I don't know, like have a physical photo album and to have some physical things that remind you of moments, and it's something that makes you feel loved as well and appreciated, because like, oh, mom and daddy, they made the effort. Like I remember my grandparents, for example, they put together a photo album with like some pictures from my birth to my 18th birthday. Basically, they gave it to me when I was 18 years old and an adult, so to say, let's say. And then the last page, which was like halfway through, so it's like, okay, so we did this to now for you, and from now on, you take over and you continue your journey and stuff. So it was something, it was really nice, and I could feel again, it was from the heart and it was loving, and it was done, because they were cherishing their child or their grandchild, and it makes you feel appreciated. And I think that's important for us also, to look back and to see and to know and have that assurance that, we are being loved, and that people make effort, to collect those memories that they had of moments with us. And even, today, like, yeah, I'm not big on like taking pictures or videos or so, but then my wife, she would have, tons of that. And sometimes, she's looking back even just 2, 3, 4 years ago. And then, I see Emma when she was a baby, and that she was like, whoa, like, that's amazing that you took that. And it's like, whoa, I didn't even remember she was chunky like that. I didn't remember she was doing this and that. No, I had forgotten. So it's, it's really
Yes.
precious because it helps, and then
Did you have one of those Michelin babies as well?
yes. and then it's like on a whole different level, it's like because then sometimes I notice also, so not everybody has that privilege, or not everybody lived through that, or has parents, or had even people with the possibilities of doing that. And then, but if you really look at it from a different angle, then it is you know, it goes back to the notion of living in this world but not really being of this world. So those things are nice to have, and they, you know, they can bring nice memories, and they anchor you, you know, in this existence, in this life. But on a whole different level, it's like, you know, you can get that feeling of being appreciated, of being loved. You can find that if on an outside level nobody shows that to you or ever did, and you didn't get this little thing and that little thing, and you feel nobody was there, and you didn't have parents or family, and you didn't have all of that, you know, that you see your friend or your neighbor having and bragging about. But still, if you know, if you all if those things anchor you in just this experience in this life, then you're missing something, because that's also, you know, that's a different side of the medal. If you're like so intrigued, or if those things really anchor you and make you believe that that's all there is, then you're missing sometimes, you're missing something, you're missing the essence, I believe. And sometimes the lack of having things like that can actually trigger you, or make you understand, make you go beyond the reality of that, you know, just the physicality of this life. So they can make you go to a place where it's like, oh wow, you know, well, where is this sense of, you know, of love, of being in the flow, of being carried through life, of being appreciated. Is that coming from the outside? Do I depend on getting that sense from somebody on the outside, or is that something that I can actually find within myself in every moment? And it wouldn't depend on like a photo album, it wouldn't depend on somebody saying anything special, but actually I can find that within myself. And then I think
Yes,
that is really an essence. So
that's
not to judge any of those things, whether it's good or bad, but you know, it's great if you have it, and it's great to, you know, those memories and so. But also there's something beyond that.
yes. That's
Really,
why I like to when I say you know, fundamentally you're alone with yourself. If everything was like stripped away from you, you know, you've just got like you just nakedness. There's you're not completely alone. You still have yourself.
Yeah, and look at the language,
You know,
alone.
in
All one. So all is in one,
ah
and the one is in all. So language gives away a
yes.
lot sometimes.
I
Thanks,
really
Dennis.
like how the episode of the fear of death ultimately circled back to fear of being unloved. I think that's, I mean, it might be the fundamental issue behind like a lot of trauma and just fear in general. It's one of the things we can't live without. It, yeah.
And maybe also not seeing that you are that already. That, you know, if you cannot see that love is all there is, even if it sounds cheesy, but if and I don't mean like the romantic love, you know, that some of us, you know, see as the only love there is, but I mean that universal, you know, love, that beingness. If we cannot see ourselves as that, then we're gonna then we have to go and look for it in other places or in other people.
Mm.
I think
Yeah, I definitely. Oh, go ahead.
one of the biggest issues might be that people only see love as romantic love. Uh, Even if they rationally they're like, "Oh yeah, I love my friends," but you know, it's different. They still don't grasp that there are many, many different ways to say I love you and to say that you care. And I don't know, it's always appropriate to say that you love someone. You just got to figure out how.
Yeah.
How do they need to be loved?
True.
Yeah, and there's definitely societal pressure and kind of programming and conditioning to love their cars and love their teams and love the city they're in and all these inanimate objects. But
Even to love certain types of relationships. So it's almost like portrayed, no, no, this is the only type of relationship that's love is. And if it deviates from that, it's kind of just like, oh well, it's obviously not that anymore then. Or it's, you know, I'm gonna push. It's gotta be only this way. It has to look exactly like this. But that's not true. There's too many potentials. It's going to be the same love, but it doesn't have to look how we're told it's supposed to look.
yeah, Yeah, so I think there's a lot to this exercise, and certainly in the one I describe in the Art of Manliness, they talk about writing an outline and then kind of structuring it into six different segments about your childhood and your career and I think your family and your family relationships and your hobbies and your interests. But you know, there's a lot to this exercise that goes into a lot of different areas. Certainly into journaling, certainly into understanding motivation, certainly being able to communicate better with other people about who you are and what you're interested in, about finding out what really is important to you. There's just a ton of things, but I think there's also something, and that is what are you willing to die for? You know, so many people are also kind of afraid of death, but they don't even know what their life is worth or why are they even living it. You know, and if you're not living your life for something important, then why are you living at all? And unfortunately, a lot of people are just living to live, and that's not enough. And so a lot of I think a lot of the masses out there are have fallen for this kind of conditioning, and because they're just afraid of death and afraid of being loved, you know, afraid of not being loved, that they're kind of pinched in a place where they just don't know what to do, and because they just keep getting shoved in a particular direction, that's what they do. But in the end, they end up, you know, really disgruntled and angry, and this is how a lot of you know, people are so triggered and become even more triggered as they get pushed closer and closer to the edge by the system that's essentially, you know, trying to take whatever valuable they can from them. uh, this is no way to live, and this is another kind of circumstance that I think is a reflection of actually the rulers, the ruling class, because everything that they're promoting is essentially what they're experiencing themselves, which is the same thing: fear, and in particular the fear of death as well. But what do you think
I'd
about all
like
that?
to. I don't want to go too far off topic because I know me getting into anything trauma, it's easy for me to do. You said there's a lot of people out there living just to live. And I don't disagree with that. I think there are. And I think that I also agree that it is no way to live your life. It is miserable. I have been there. And to be honest, one of my biggest fears is going back to that place and just being okay with it. That's a really big fear of mine. Uh, but I have to give credit where credit is due to the ability of, even under those circumstances, there's something in our DNA that still says no. Living is still worth it. You still have there's a shot. There's an opportunity somewhere. Because otherwise, I truly believe, I think our brains would just give up, our bodies would give up, and we would pass away. Um, yeah, I have to say something like it is. It just baffles my mind that people are, even under the worst circumstances, they're still willing to live. I don't know. It's
Yeah, I think I think, you know, as long as you're breathing, you've got a chance to you know, everything to turn out all right. You know, and I think there is something to that you know, that it draws us and into, you know, continuing the experience of life. But if we allow ourselves to be a cog in the machine, you know, we can live, but it is really a real minute part of the potential of what we've got as a person, as an individual, and then as an individual in a community of people.
I would probably phrase it in a way that a lot of people, if not most, they're not living, but they're surviving. Because in my in my in my mind, like, if you live to live, maybe that's all we're here to do, just to live. Because sometimes it's like, I live for this and for that, and to achieve this and to achieve that, and then, but if you really like come to yourself and it's like, you know, who is doing that? is it your true self? Is it who you really are that lives to achieve this and to get there and to have that purpose and so on and so forth? Because in the end, really, what, and that's talking about the purpose of life. Obviously, what is the purpose? So it's something that in the end you give yourself, but then who is the one that's giving that to yourself? And does that one have any purpose or need anything or need any goal to achieve? Or is living just to live, could that be actually the goal? And then from that perspective, whatever happens to you, whatever, whoever jumps out in front of you, or however, whether sun is shining or it's raining or snow or whatever, you just live to live, and you experience life the way it is in that very moment, and you're centered in that, living your life and being in, you're centered in your beingness regardless of what's really going on around. That seems like a valuable goal for me to not getting caught up with beliefs and images and you have to do this. And of course you were differentiating between things that are installed by the system and by media into us, and beliefs and goals, or what we have to aim for, who we have to be. But then also it's oftentimes we ourselves are really the ones who have expectations and who want to achieve things, and not to say to that it's right or wrong, but it's also it's easy to get lost in that and to maybe miss the biggest thing that there is, which is to live life. And maybe there's a way of of living life in the world that we're born into, and with setting goals and achieving and playing our role, so to say, in the within the realms that we are born into, while not losing focus, or while not losing that connection to, okay, I'm acting here, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, but I'm centered within myself. I'm centered in that beingness. I'm centered in living my life the way it is, and to find balance within that. That's something I think worthwhile striving for. If you even have to strive for that, or if you just have to stop striving and just just be, what does
Relax
it take
into it.
to live?
Well, I tell you, this is I'll give you a great example. When I first did this thing, I was probably 23, 24 years old when I wrote my first eulogy. I read the book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, and this is one of the exercises in it. But I can tell you that my 5-year plan had all kinds of stuff, like I want a convertible car, I want a motorcycle, I want a pickup truck, I want a house, I want a garage, I want this, all these things. I can tell you today, if I write my eulogy, I don't want any.
What do you mean if you write your eulogy? Wasn't the eulogy an exercise for today? What do you mean by if you write your eulogy? You mean you didn't do the exercise?
Well,
Stop nitpicking.
We all had to do the exercise. We all had to do it.
Nobody's perfect.
I'm gonna change your label underneath your name to teacher's pet. Put an apple up there.
No, but he's the teacher today, so I don't know how that works.
Thanks, Alicia.
Who's the teacher?
Me into admitting. But what I'm suggesting is that from the time frame that that 30-year difference in time frame is one in which a lot of things have changed, and a lot of these material things, and a lot of these things that were advertised, and what I thought was the expectations for my life, are things that are really meaningless, to the person that I am and what I really want to be and how I want to impact other people. And I
Why?
see
what is meaningful for you now? So that was meaningless then.
Yeah, it is.
So what's
It is.
meaningful now?
And as a matter of fact, I just did a interview, which I'll definitely want to tag to this, which is to Beth Martin's book, which is called Journey. But it's about the archetypes and our own kind of the tools that we build our personalities with. But in that particular interview, she talks a great deal about confronting her own death and how that spurred her to write this book, and to really understand who is the person that she is and why does she believe the way she does. And certainly a lot of the things that go on in our minds are things that we don't necessarily need, and a lot of our mindset is almost diseased, and kind of creates the diseases and the afflictions that we suffer through. And certainly the traumas have a lot to do with that as well. And these are all things that I think her book demonstrates. And so,
in regard to answering your question, it is about understanding really the mechanism of how we understand, and utilizing, the higher consciousness, the things like love and joy and reason, to really find what is really important to us and the people that are important to us and the reasons why those people are important to us. And more than likely, those are the things that are really the things that we should be nourishing and facilitating for each other, and those are
Mm.
things like trust and commitment, and understanding win-win and constant improvement, raising excellence.
I really like the word nourishment rather than
Yeah, me too.
kind of stressing about, like, for example, me stressing about what I'm doing wrong. I could instead focus on all of my energy in just nourishing a relationship, making sure it's nourished, making sure that another person knows that I care about them, like you guys. That would be nourishing
You're pretty good at that.
instead of,
Focusing
yeah.
that on yourself can also be a really, especially if you're really good at giving it for other people. I've realized that it's often really hard to give that to my own self because I don't really know why, actually.
That self-worthiness thing,
Well, I think there is that
usually.
opportunity to do it on the outside or do it on the inside. And if you can't do it on the inside, do it on the outside and learn, you know. And so, like, if you can't love yourself, then love other people,
But
and then learn how to love yourself through what you can do and how you can love other people to then love yourself.
but I used to have this belief that I couldn't cook healthy unless, like, full meal, proper meal, unless there were other people, because what's the point for myself? I'll just have toast and all that. And that's fallacious. Like, that's not right. You should treat yourself as well as you treat other people, or better.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but in some instances, it's just not possible. It just doesn't make sense to you. So, the inner reflects the outer, and the outer reflects the inner. So, there's different ways to solve the problem, and approach the problem, and don't be limiting. I think, like, a lot of people say, well, you can't love anybody else until you love yourself first. Well, that may work for some people, but it may not work for everybody. And so to try and limit people by making a rule that isn't necessarily, uh, you know, absolute, means you're just, creating disinformation, and roadblocks for people that may actually be able to use that.
I don't know who said it, but you were talking about like as above, so below, I think, or something. Or you're talking about like, reflecting in and out. It reminded me of, I don't know who said it, and I don't even know if it's the actual quote. But it may have been added onto. But it says, as above, so below, as within, as without. And that one added a lot more context, maybe, or different levels of layers. That's the word I'm looking for. Different layers of like how things are reflected by our own emotions and how we feel, and it changes how we view what's going on in the world.
Yeah, I think there's some connotations to, Aleister Crowley and some of the satanic rituals and stuff like that. So you got to be careful about as above and below, and what
No,
people
no, no.
think
This is
that
straight.
means.
No,
But
this is straight up Emerald tablets. Aleister Crowley might have used it, but that doesn't make it his.
well, I'm
Yeah,
telling you,
they
I would
predate
say
Aleister
there's a lot of
Crowley.
yeah. Yeah, but all I'm saying is that for those audience members that might trigger somebody, don't be triggered.
True.
It is true. I mean, it reflects the reality of the experience, and in that regard, I think it's useful.
Absolutely.
But with that said, I think we're coming to the end of our show. Um, I really
Already?
appreciate you guys. Yeah, it moves so quickly. Certainly appreciate the audience's attention and giving us the time. I hope this was definitely useful. Certainly, this is an area that I feel really strongly about. I think it is one of the basis for really kind of creating a spot that you can grow a lot from, because there's a lot of different things in this that this exercise could bring about. And so it's certainly something that I would highly recommend. If anybody is interested in trying it, go for it. Try and write your own eulogy and see what happens. And if you have trouble with that, feel free to Google writing your own eulogy, or following some of the links we've got below. Um, I think it's really important, and it's certainly one of the things that I have utilized in my life to make myself much more successful, and certainly learn a great deal more about myself. But does anybody else have anything in regard to that? Any fleeting comments or last words in regard to this subject?
Tomorrow, we'll talk about communication.
Yeah, but that's not the question I asked. Does anybody else have anything?
I
Fear
did.
kills the immune system.
That's another good one.
Sugar kills the immune system.
That too. And carbs.
Oh, Kelly says something. Maxwell Maltz, wasn't it? How to Win Friends and Influence People. It was quoted in there at the least. Yeah, still
Well, I think
Emerald
Maxwell
tablets.
Maltz, I think his was Cybernetics, I think was his book.
Wasn't
Maybe
this
there was a few
Napoleon
others.
Hill, the one she's mentioning? How to Win Friends and Influence People?
No, that's Dale Carnegie is actually
Dale
that.
Carnegie. I get those guys.
What you said last, it reminded me of the holographic principle of the universe, which is that you can find, like a piece of that in everything that is around us. So if that is everywhere, like everything that you can touch, hear, smell, and see is, and everything is in everything, so to say, and then if all what that we're experiencing is part of creation, then to find that love and to find love, as you said earlier, if you cannot find it within yourself, and maybe you can find it in your pet, or in I don't know, in washing your car, or in nature, or whatever it is. So it is really, I agree to that. You have to find those entry points, to reach there. And then I always feel reminded about the wheel again. Wherever you are on the rim on the outside, and wherever that entry point is for you, is it in the physical, in the emotional, in whichever level, and you find the entry point and you keep on following it, and you're going to end up in the hub in the middle of the wheel. And I found it remarkable that interview that you mentioned. I started watching it. I didn't finish it yet, but I found it amazing. I was, I was just reminded about like how it was basically different words describing what I really try to express, and what I'm helped with that wheel thing, the holistic being, and to seeing, that all is reflected in each and everything. So if creation is all that there is, then you might find it in a flower. You can find it within yourself. You can find it in a situation that arises in your day-by-day being. And and if you can find it in the eulogy, then I think it's just another great tool. And maybe that is an entry point also to progress, and to to advance on your journey. And so thank you very much for sharing this tool. I think it's really powerful. Although I have barely scratched the surface of it, I'm not even finished with my outline yet. So I'm excited about, finding out where it's going to lead me still.
Yeah, and I'm definitely with Agnieszka's needling. I am definitely going to write my eulogy.
It's not
I'm gonna
needling.
use this as the.
It's equality. Is what it is. Quality.
It's yeah. I guess it's quality assurance.
No, I said equality.
QC.
Equality. Right.
But everyone, thank you so much for taking the time and giving us your attention. We greatly appreciate it. We're on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. And I know the times are changing, so that's a possibility that we might be moving back.
No,
or
no,
forward
North
a half
America
hour.
already left. We're good. We're
Okay,
good.
so I guess we're going to stay at this time.
Yeah.
But with that, I also want to remind everybody that's in the Autonomy group or in the Anarchapulco group that we're going to be having another meeting after this one where I'm going to be introducing Gina Carr. We're going to be talking about leadership, ethics, and organization. That will be at 9 p.m. Eastern time tonight. And you can find the Zoom chat room number thing where you can find that in the either in Facebook or on the Telegram chat for Anarchapulco 24/7 365 or Discord for the Autonomy people.
Yeah.
And thanks again, and have a wonderful night, day, afternoon, wherever you're at.
Have a good one.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Glad you all attended and watched.
Yes.
You're awesome. You can tip all of it out. No, don't tip it out like that.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Kelly.